What's up, family? Welcome back to Nazrani's in the City. I'm Josh Abraham.
And I'm Abi Abraham. And today we have a special guest here with us today. We have Rajeev Valiyaveettil, Father Rajeev. And we're actually here in my home parish, San Francisco, technically Milpitas, California, in Northern California. And in the school building, yes, we have a school, which is the only institution in the diocese. So super proud of that, and we're glad to be here. Nacha, thank you for letting us use the facilities as soon as you got here.
That's right. And yeah, we want to welcome Acha onto our podcast. I guess a couple of things have happened to you in the last week or so.
Sure, yeah. Well, it's good to be with you guys. I'm in the midst of a transfer. I guess I'm here now, so the transfer's done. Now the assistant vicar here at St. Thomas, Syro Malabar Church, Ebby's home parish. So it's good to be with you guys here in this preschool that we have here.
Yeah, as you could tell from the background and everything.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Sweet. Well, shall we get started?
Sure.
I think, another thing to plug in is that Father Rajeev, actually, that's just a crazy story right there, because Father Rajeev is officially the chaplain of Syro Creatives.
I don't know how that happened. I just liked all your posts.
Yeah. Actually, I think it was...
Big mistake.
I remember we were joking about it. I remember it was either I texted you about it or you texted me like, oh, being a chaplain of Syro Creatives. And then at some point it was just like, yeah, that's it.
Right.
Your sister, Divya, would message me every now and then, just in terms of content, and I try to be pretty good about responding. So that's all I did. Just liked the content, and then tried to, help in being able to be a resource, and
that's the crazy part, that you're doing all that while you were still associate pastor in Houston.
Yeah.
And then we find out that you're coming to California.
When do we find out?
The day that we recorded the first episode.
Yes, literally the day we recorded our first episode of the podcast. We had no idea anything of this was happening. We found out our chaplain is actually coming to California, and blew our mind. I was literally in the car with Siraj, just dancing. We were all going crazy, right before Qurbana. And yeah, that's crazy how that ended up.
Here we are.
That's right. So we're just excited for you to be on this podcast, and then who knows, future podcasts, future Syro Creatives projects.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of stuff coming our way. But yeah, so it's gonna be kind of like an interview type style, but we just want to have a conversation with you, right? So I think maybe we can start with, for all the listeners, just who you are. You are a priest for the Syro Malabar Diocese of Chicago, the American Diocese. Take it wherever you want to go.
Yeah, well, who am I? I mean, I love, first of all, the style of this podcast and the openness that you guys are always about. And so, I'm trying every day to, when you ask that question, to say, no, I'm first, a son of God, and someone who is trying to be ever aware of His mercy and His grace. It still blows my mind away that I'm a priest, especially in the context of being able to celebrate the Holy Qurbana and say some of these prayers. It blows my mind away that me, born and raised in Tampa, Florida, is now a priest. And so, but that's what I am. I mean, I'm a son of God and blessed to be a priest now for 2 years. Grew up here in the States. My parents immigrated from Kerala, early 90s. They got married here, which is pretty cool. They actually got married in the Syro Malabar Rite, and it was in a local Latin church there in Florida. But yeah, I mean, I have been blessed by my parents. I've been blessed particularly by the Catholic Church locally there in Florida. And priesthood was something that was always on my mind, but never knew exactly how to go about the whole process. But eventually things began to click, and by the time I was in college, I felt a real serious pull towards priesthood, and it was in particular to the Syro Malabar Church, and went through the seminary process and ordained in 2018, June 2nd, and my first assignment was in Houston. So now 2 years later, here I am in San Francisco, or technically our parish is closer to San Jose. It's in a place called Milpitas, but we say San Francisco Church. But all our parishes are like that. I mean, no church is actually in the city that we say.
That's right. Even the Chicago Cathedral is not in Chicago.
It's in Bellwood. Yeah. So, but yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about being born and raised here, and then also being formed by the local Catholic Church here. So could you tell us a little bit about sort of what was that blend of your upbringing? Because I'm sure a lot of us kind of go through that same thing of the blend of sort of the local Latin church and the Syro Malabar, and how that kind of formed you.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't be who I am, especially in being able to say very proudly that I'm Catholic, if it weren't for that upbringing of being around the local Latin church. And to be honest, like, I really didn't even know the difference. I honestly thought like Syro Malabar was just like some crazy Malayalam version of just the Latin rite. In 2010, I went to Chicago for a DYLG conference, and at that conference, there are still people today who say that you're the guy that said zero and not Syro, right? So I really had no
Syro.
Yeah, I really had no concept of what Syro Malabar was, and my parents, I think they had some awareness of being Syro Malabar, but I don't think we ever really talked about it. So, but I was blessed to go to school basically all under the local diocese and the Catholic Diocese St. Petersburg, which is the local diocese there in Tampa. So went to a Salesian school for the elementary, middle school, all that, but in connection with the diocese. And then high school was it was a school called Bishop McLaughlin, which was a particular school that was named after the first bishop of St. Petersburg. So pretty much all my schooling was within the diocese to a certain extent, the Latin diocese, and had a lot of like really good priest role models, especially that were involved in the school that would come and like celebrate mass. The vocation director was an awesome priest who would come like every month or so to both schools that I was at. Yeah, he knew me. He would sit at my lunch table, and I think he had an inkling that maybe there was a vocation. So he would sit near my friends, and they would always say, "Oh, if Rajeev is sitting with us, then Father Len is going to end up at this table." Yeah. And it always kind of happened.
If I can step in for a
sure.
sec, were those schools, like, would you say they were very authentically promoting Catholicism? Because I know there's a lot of like namesake Catholic schools. So I'm just curious, like,
sure.
in your
Yeah,
upbringing, would you say?
To a certain extent, at least for me, I felt that. But I recognize that a lot of my friends, my classmates that I, went to school with, maybe are not still, practicing the faith as much, but I was blessed to take whatever was there and run with it, to be able to altar serve, to be able to read during the Mass, to be able to have prayer. I think I was able to really cherish that. So I think so. And the elementary school was Salesian Sisters. So like how many people have the opportunity to actually be educated by sisters? Yeah. It's something of the past here in America. Right. But there were literally like 5 or 6 Salesian sisters around the school. So I was very much enriched by that experience. The high school that I went to, there wasn't any religious congregation, but very good lay faithful who really took their faith seriously. So I was very much enriched by their faith. Particularly the campus minister, who also taught religion, was a very faithful Filipino guy, and he actually invited me to get involved in the diocese. So I was part of the diocesan youth council that the local diocese had. To essentially, the bishop wanted young people to suggest and be involved in different things of the diocese.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, like the Catholic identity of these schools was very good for me.
Okay.
But overall, like going back to the original question, like I very much so was super connected to the local diocese. Even after I joined college, I continued to remain connected to the diocese because I was going to daily mass, and so I knew all the mass times, especially to fit around my schedule. I was a commuter going to the University of South Florida, so would go to different churches, and then we had a Catholic student center on the campus, which is of the Diocese of St. Petersburg. So I was very connected overall to that diocese, and eventually, even when I started thinking about priesthood, I took a spiritual director who was the assistant pastor at the parish that I would typically go to, and eventually that parish is where I was ordained. But he kind of guided me, and he was a priest of that diocese. So I am very much grateful for the formation that I received from that particular diocese. So it was very much a part of everything for me.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think like just hearing your story, I don't think I've actually heard your whole story before, but it's almost like it's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Because based off of everything you said, it almost seems like just the natural step, especially as you start to discern priesthood, that you would just join a study for the Diocese of St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Or
well, it was happening.
Oh, okay. There it is.
This is news to me.
It was happening because
Gotcha.
when I, even started thinking about priesthood, I mean, my parents had a lot of connections to Syro Malabar priest, and we had a lot of different retreat teams that came to Tampa. So I had, connections to priests, particularly of Indian heritage. But really, more seriously was I had connections to the Diocese of St. Petersburg. So this Father Len that I mentioned, he had actually already given me an application at one point, and I had asked for it too. So I was very much involved in discerning priesthood for the local diocese, was going to discernment programs that they had, and they always had really good food, free food. They had this thing called Andrew's dinner with the bishop, and so like you went, and there was like steak. So it was great. I love the Diocese of St. Petersburg.
They really reel you in.
Yeah, it was great. And I went to the college seminary in Miami, just for like a come and see. And I had met seminarians from even the major seminary. So I kind of even knew, like, if I become a priest or at least join the seminary for this diocese, I know exactly where I'm going. I'm going to go to the college seminary in Miami, and then eventually end up possibly in Boynton Beach, where the major seminary is.
St. Vincent de Paul.
St. Vincent de Paul, where we have some guys now.
Right.
So everything was pretty clear, and it seemed good. Like, I knew priest of the local diocese. Even I had kind of mentioned to my parents that I was open to priesthood, and they were comfortable somewhat with the idea of me being around, because we had Indian priests serving in the Latin diocese. So they kind of see me in that role. So I was there. I was, beginning to fill out the application, slowly, but I hadn't really gotten around to like going through it fully. And I mentioned this conference that I went to in Chicago, the STYLG, and that changed everything, because I had some awareness of Syro, like it was growing, but really that conference changed my whole outlook of the Syro Malabar Church, particularly when I experienced the English Kurbana. It was the first time that I had experienced the English Kurbana, and I met a lot of our really great priests like Father Vinod. Even the first time I had a real conversation with Bishop Angardiat was at this conference. I was like, wow, there's something to this whole Syro Malabar thing. And that conference opened up a door, and I kept it open. And even when I came back, just began to have more conversations, especially with Father Vinod. And it made sense to go and join the seminary for the Syro Malabar Diocese. But actually, it made no sense at all. It made sense that I had to do it, but really I had no idea how it was all going to happen. Compared to the Latin
the
option,
blueprint wasn't there.
Yeah, it was like, you know exactly what's going to happen. You're going to be in this locality, whereas with Syro, it was like, you're going to join the seminary and then possibly you'll come to Chicago at some point, and then we don't really know all the other steps, but it will happen somehow. I was just like, okay. So I literally felt like I'm walking into utter confusion.
At this point, was Kevin Etchen already in seminary?
So by my second year in college, Kevin Etchen had already joined the seminary. So that was one part of, like, if you join, then you guys can come together and study in Chicago, near Bishop Bangardi, near the bishop's house, the cathedral, and all that. But still, it was like a lot of question marks. But eventually I just said, okay, I'll go. But the application was there for the Diocese of Petersburg.
Yeah.
Did you know Malayalam before seminary? Like, was that a part of?
Probably just like a lot of, sons and daughters of immigrants. My parents speak, but I pretty much spoke back in English. And my mom always tells a story of, I remember the day, you didn't speak a word of English, but then all of a sudden you came home from school and you said, the frog is jumping. And then after you said the frog is jumping, everything changed. You stopped speaking Malayalam. Wow. I was like, okay. So that was about it. I mean, parents spoke, but I always spoke back in English.
Was that
so
like a fear of yours going in or not?
Very much so, yeah. Because my initial understanding, and even as I was going to the seminary, was that being Syro Malabar means knowing Malayalam. So it was definitely a fear that was there for me. But, I just kind of was like, okay, Lord, I'm just going to go forward and see what happens. And Kevin Etchen, too, I remember having conversations with him, and I was like, do you know Malayalam? Like, do you know what's going on? He was just totally like, I don't know. And I got no answers from him. Yeah. But in his no answers, I felt like, well, let's go. Let's do it together and figure it out,
Yeah, just a real opportunity to trust, right?
Right.
I also think that's so Kevin Etchen, just very nonchalant. Just be like, let's do it. Yeah, that's awesome. And how was your time? Because I think another question that might have popped up was like, oh, am I going to go to seminary in Kerala? Right. If I choose to be a Syro Malabar priest.
Yeah. So do we have a specific formation
from
the start? Or
So in a lot of ways, you were kind of paving the way for our diocese in terms of seminary formation. And even Abhi and I followed after you. Long live St. Joe's. But
St. Joe's.
But yeah, what was that like? Kind of going through.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that we were guinea pigs,
Yeah.
Because we really didn't know how it was going to all happen. But, it was challenging, but it was also very, very beautiful at times. So, as you guys mentioned, we don't have a specific seminary for the Syro Malabar Church here in the U.S. Hopefully, in the future, it's something that we can think about. If not a seminary, at least a real kind of house where guys can come and discern the priesthood, particularly for the Syro Malabar, right? But I very much appreciate my formation that I received through the Latin Church. So, like both of you guys, I went to St. Joseph College Seminary in Chicago, so got very much connected to the local archdiocese and all the other dioceses that were present there. And it was good in that sense because it's very American, very good food, a lot of just
Mama Jean.
Yeah.
Right.
Just a lot of just good brotherly connections that you build up with guys from especially all over the Midwest there at St. Joe's. But I guess there wasn't a Syro Malabar track or anything at these seminaries, but what was good about being in Chicago is that you're very close to the bishop. You're close to the cathedral, and since Kevin Etchen and I were the first two, I guess there was all this like these are the two, they're gonna be the first priests of the the Western world for the Syro Malabar Church. So I guess we were put in a lot of spotlight. Like I remember if there was anything that we could do at parishes, they'd be like, oh yeah, we have 2 seminarians, and then we would just be going around and visiting parishes, and it was great. But at the same time, I remember at one point the rector had to step in, and they're like, these guys are in formation. They need to study, they need to spend time praying in our chapel. Let's try to ease up on the amount of travel that they're going, because I remember just always having a bag to go, just because we were doing a lot of that.
Wow.
But I think that eased a little bit by the time you guys got to the seminary. But most of our, I guess, Syro formation came by going to the parishes. We were pretty involved in the diocesan youth apostolate, and then through our summer experiences, I particularly had a chance to go to India several times, and then eventually even went to India for a whole year before I even started theology. So, so I guess the integration of Latin and Syro Malabar was even there throughout my formation, even early on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, how was your time in India? Like, I'm sure those were, because one thing, like, go to India with your parents, but to go by yourself this time around.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was rough. Especially when you go with your parents, there's like pretty much like a set date where you're gonna leave.
Right.
But a lot of times with going as a seminarian, of course there is a return date, but you're a little bit more on your own, and there's not like a defined itinerary. You have to visit all these family members. Like when you go as a seminarian to a parish or to a seminary or just to a diocese in general, it's really open. So it was great. I think it was during my 1 year after philosophy where I actually blogged about it, and just popping bubbles. Like you go in and you want certain things to be this way, but after a while, just like, okay, I'm just here. Let's just go with the flow, And that even was a thing for me in terms of language too. I was like, I am only going to speak English. I'm not going to even try speaking Malayalam. But after a while, it's just like, okay, whatever I got, we'll just go with it. So I really, enjoyed the experiences looking back at it now, but maybe during the moments it was kind of, gosh, like this is not easy. This is tough. But I think if anything too, like going to India also allowed me to kind of get more of that perspective that our adults or even my own parents have. So my relationships, I know, definitely improved after all these experiences in India, particularly to the adult community. So with my own parents, like now all of a sudden I know Ganakari, I know Komaragam, where my parents are from. My dad's from Tuandram. So to visit all these places now gives me some context of, these stories that they would tell us, and I'm just like, oh, whatever. But being there gave me that experience. So it was beautiful, definitely.
I mean, that's interesting that you really said that you said that, because in our last episode we talked about how like there's this disconnect because just parents don't think the way that we think, and we don't think the way our parents think. So to you to actually have that sort of experience where you can actually like, you can think the way that you think, that aids you in your ministry, right? Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. When you went to India, like in the early years, was it for like a sort of Syro crash course formation?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, I mean, so first couple times just went, in the summer, but then I went for a whole year after philosophy, and part of that 1 year like intention was, so Kevin Hutchin was actually a year junior to me because I had joined after 2 years of college. But he joined right out of high school, and he's a year younger than me. So I guess Bishop wanted us to go to theology together. So technically, it was kind of like a year for me to just kind of be around the church and be getting formation. while Kevin Hutchins finishing up his philosophy. So, so I went to India, and it was like kind of a chance to be able to be fully immersed in all things Syro.
Sure.
Especially going to Kerala in that 1 year after philosophy. I just went to different dioceses, would hang out with Dutchins, even bishops. I went to the Curia, the major Archbishop Curia in Kakinad, and just hung out, So it was, pretty much just like a super crash course of all things Syro. And then I went to North India too and experienced the non-Malu world. Like we have mission dioceses,
right?
In North India and even like just central India too. So this is really good, really, really beneficial for me.
Was there studies like along with that, or was it mainly just an immersion into?
Yeah, it was mainly just an immersion. I mean, later on when I went to India again as a deacon, I was in the seminary. So that was more like a formal academic type of time. But this was more just a lot of conversations, just experiences being in within the Syro Malabar Church.
And that's really cool. When I think about like how you were formed in this time, because it wasn't the case that you decided to go to become a priest of the Syro Malabar Church. So they just sent you to a college seminary in Kerala, and then you do that major seminary, and then you come back. No, like you went to St. Joe's. You had these experiences not only in southern India, like Kerala, but you also went to northern India. But then after philosophy, you don't even stay in the U.S. You go to Rome, and that's an even like I think there's like you have this more kind of like this more universal outlook on things, right? Instead of just being like particular to Syro.
Right.
So what was your experience in Rome like?
It was I mean, in one word, it was amazing. I still continue to talk about my experiences in Rome, but Rome allows me to look at the church universally, because literally you are placed in the city where the church comes together. And I was blessed to study at a seminary where we had about 120 guys. And at the time when I was there, we had like 22, 23 nations represented.
Wow.
So mainly guys all coming from the Roman Catholic rite. But each country kind of adds its own flavor to Catholicism. So it was beautiful to experience that. And also in the seminary that I'm studying at, we have about 25 guys from India. And I'm grouped into that category. And the guys are mainly from Kerala, but we have a mix of seminarians, mostly who are now priests, from the Latin Rite, so the different Latin Rite dioceses in Kerala, but also the Syro Malabar Diocese. So it was, really you get just an experience of a church by waking up in the morning and going to the chapel and eating breakfast, because you're, looking at, well, at the time, just seminarians, but now clergy from all across the world. So it really opened up my eyes to what does it mean to be Catholic, because you literally get to see the lens of the faith from all these different backgrounds and cultures. Even just like for Christmas, all these countries would be given a chance to put on like a celebration of the Incarnation through this Mexican tradition, which is called the Posada. But that Posada had, like it would be happening over different days. So one day would be the Indian community, one day would be the African community. So just a lot of experiences just in the seminary itself, and then going to the different churches in the Vatican, in Rome. And what was cool too for me, being in Rome, I guess being a Syro Malabar seminarian too, was also to be very connected to the Syro Malabar Church there, because it's not very well known, but we have a pretty significant Syro Malabar community there in Rome. We have about, at the time, there was like 12 missions. So we had a chance as seminarians to be able to go to the to the missions. There's maybe like 30, 40 families in each mission. But the Kurbana was mainly in Malayalam, so I didn't really feel comfortable serving. But we had Italian youth, meaning they're also like us, Malayali parents, but they were born and raised in Italy. And they speak really good Italian. So myself and also Kevin Hutchin loved the opportunity to be able to try to minister to, the Italian youth who are born and raised there, who kind of have a touch with Malayalam, but they're more comfortable with Italy. So
I had no idea there was a significant amount of immigrants to Italy.
12 missions.
Yeah.
Dang.
And it's growing. I mean, now they even have a bishop who's based in Rome, but he kind of acts as the visitator for all the different communities of the Syro Malabar Church all across Europe. So, you go and you're having this universal experience, but you're also enriched in your own, Syro Malabar identity as you're kind of interacting with the seminarians in your own seminary, but also, the faithful in Rome itself.
Yeah, because that's what I was wondering about, like whether or not you were being confirmed in your Syro Malabar identity as you go through all these experiences.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, every step of the way, like, it seemed very confusing of like, why am I being Syro? Like, why am I taking this, especially as I'm surrounded by mostly, guys of the Roman Catholic tradition. But actually, whether it be in philosophy or theology in Rome, I'm always being confirmed of that. In philosophy at St. Joseph, I remember we had the chance to bring the Holy Kurbana for the first time. And the experience of, and I think by the time you guys got there, Dr. Dussel, was he still there?
No, he left after my first year.
So I remember Dr. Dussel like just playing all our Syro Malabar English music written by Balakalechin, because we couldn't bring in someone from the church. So he said, oh no, I'll do it. So like having him play, and then we had seminarians learn the music real quick. Like within 2 days, they learned the music and they sung the music for the Kurbana. Having our priest concelebrate and also the seminarians serve. So those experiences in philosophy were super enriching to like be able to share what it is that, I'm particularly a part of. And then in Rome too, I had certain experiences of that. Like I would sometimes bring guys who don't know English, who don't know Malayalam, and they experience our liturgy, and they say, wow, this is beautiful. And we actually have a working translation of the Kurbana in Italian. So when we would have our ordination, so especially the minor orders, and have guys take part in the Holy Kurbana in mostly Italian, and to see their face and like, wow, this is beautiful, was great. So constantly being affirmed. And then even sometimes just being at the lunch table and talking to guys over food, questions will come up and be like, oh, what's the Syro Malabar perspective on this? Or what's the Eastern view? That happens at the lunch table, when we're eating food, but even in the classroom too, because we, particularly myself and Kevin Hutchin, being from America and like, I guess somewhat being unique, and like we're Syro Malabar. We're American because there's also guys from America, but Roman Catholic, but we're American and we're studying for the Syro Malabar Diocese. There would be questions that would come at us in Italian and be like, hey, what is cosa Syro Malabarese penso, and they'll be like, what does the Syro Malabar Church think about all this and stuff? So in all the experiences, constant affirmation and keep going along the path for this.
Dang. Yeah, I mean, I even remember like when we would do, like when I was at St. Joseph, we would do Kurbana in our chapel. Like it helped me kind of come to this idea that like I'm Catholic, like we're all Catholic, but I have something unique to give, right? And especially like to the other guys, I was like, I want to share this with you, like the beauty of, especially like after I realized like how beautiful the English Kurbana is,
right?
Wanting to share that with other guys, like this is how we experience the Eucharistic ministry, and like everybody was just so blown away by it. And it's constantly, and in my own story too, like sharing the uniqueness of the tradition and the rite, like is what confirms me in my own Syro Malabar identity.
Yeah. And I think like on that same note of like the affirmations of the Syro Malabar, I guess that partially answers it, but like what do you think the relevancy of Syro Malabar is both in America, but just the West at large, right? Because a lot of people kind of make the argument that, you know, why not just acclimate with the already formed Latin churches? You know, we have numbers, so why not just acclimate so there's formation there and we can contribute in that way?
Yeah.
What is the need for all of this work to bring Syro Malabar here, all of this work to do the translations and getting you guys through seminary, all of this stuff? What is the relevancy of that? I know it's a big question.
That's a big question. But, you know,
breaking down.
The church says that these rights are important. Mm-hmm. And the church didn't just start saying that, you know, like a year ago or recently. The church has been saying that since the beginning itself. And, you know, we have to look at her wisdom and see or try to understand why. So, you know, maybe it is more logical to conform completely. But the church in her beauty for a long time has been saying, no, we need the uniqueness of these different rites. And so for me, a big part of trying to even figure this out is looking at John Paul II, St. John Paul II. And typically in my office, I have this image of him, which the Syro Creatives has put that sticker.
Quick plug, we got a sticker.
And you should get that sticker because I love that image. I would look at that image of John Paul II wearing a little bit more of the old school vestment, which is like has that brighter pink, you know.
These are Syro Malabar vestments.
These are Syro Malabar vestments, yeah. Syro Malabar vestments, the kappa, everything, the urara, he's wearing it. And it doesn't have any words on it, but it speaks so much in that this is needed. You know, like it's needed that the church knows the different traditions. And John Paul II, not just putting on the vestments, but being the main celebrant for a Rasa Kurbana in Kottayam, 1986. I wasn't even born then, but seeing that image and later on maybe reading about some of the things that he said and what you know, the church has said through councils and also popes have said that the Eastern Church is needed, right? This phrase that you guys put on the sticker, right? The church breathes with two lungs, both East and West. It's important because the Catholic Church is not narrow-minded in its approach to faith. You know, there is a variety of ways to kind of go about looking at the faith. That doesn't mean like the doctrines change, but there's a way to be able to really express the beauty, and that is very much there within the Eastern Church. And so, I mean, that's where I would just begin to answer that question, because the church has been, you know, kind of showing us for a long time that this is needed. And I think a lot of people also just have had maybe just negative experiences with their faith, or, you know, maybe they're not able to experience Jesus because they're so used to one style. But a lot of times we know that when we experience something in a very different way, but realize that, oh, it's actually what we were doing, it just kind of opens you up. And so I've seen that when I bring the Kurbana, when I was bringing it into the seminaries, but even more recently in my ministry, especially in Texas, to bring the Kurbana to campuses and have, you know, of course, our own like college students from the Syro Malabar Church there, but more so those that are trying to be authentically Catholic, but at a young age. And when they open up their eyes and see the Kurbana, like, wow, like that prayer is, you know, that's beautiful. Or even just, I remember, I say this all the time, this particular story, but we had a Q&A after Kurbana on campus, and this young man asked me, like, why is it that you do this particular gesture where I like kind of point towards the altar? And I was like, well, that's part of the rubrics. And he's like, well, I felt like you're just like drawing me into the Eucharist. Like you're inviting me to come and experience Jesus' love in a particular way. And I was like, yeah, well, that's an invitation. That's part of it. So we have something that's very beautiful and doesn't go against the Roman Catholic tradition.
Sure.
If anything, it complements it.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's not a competition. It's just we're all trying to go to the same place. But this is a unique tradition that we have been given, starting from St. Thomas the Apostle. Right.
Yeah. I think a part of it is like just how familiarity can kind of become a con, in the sense that like I would find myself like growing up in Syro Malabar asking myself like, why can't I just go to Latin? I feel like I'm getting more formation there, and I found the Mass more beautiful for a long period of time. But I realized, and I asked myself this question that I asked you, like, I don't know if this is very relevant here or if this is just us trying to bring our like Kerala traditions here. But like you said, like seeing people really appreciate from the Latin Church actively, voluntarily wanting to join Eastern churches and appreciating the beauty of the rite, it like blew my mind. And you know, the like you mentioned, like the JP2, that was like one of the images that convinced me to go Syro Malabar Seminary. And like, because it, like you said, that spoke so much more than anyone could have ever written. And like, yeah, I just think seeing people after they've witnessed like a well-done Qurbana, it's amazing to me, because I'm like, wow, like maybe there's something I'm not seeing, but it's not because there's something off on the Qurbana side. There's something I'm blinded to. And like seeing that slowly, even just in the past couple of days, like I haven't talked to you about this, but even like altar serving, right? I was telling you, like I never really altar served. But even like actively altar serving, I'm like now forced to sort of pay attention to the prayers. And I'm just like reading, I'm just like saying a prayer, and I'm just like, whoa, you know? And like every couple prayers, I had to like, there was a couple times I messed up literally because I was still stuck on the prayer before. And and that like, yeah, to me, that's just so beautiful in the importance of, my love for the Latin Church has not reduced at all. And it's not a better or worse type thing. And I think sometimes maybe even we make the mistake of doing that on the Syro Malabar side.
Yeah.
Of being like, look, man, like Latin Church has some off things, just come Syro Malabar.
No.
Right?
No,
and that's an error in itself, right? It's not that, like you were saying, it's really mutually beneficial.
Right. Yeah, I have found that the more love that I have for the Syro Malabar rite, I have grown in love for the Latin rite. So, yeah, no, I think, amen to what you were saying, sir.
I mean, I think like I have so many thoughts actually, but I'll share this one. Like the moment that I realized that I was proud to be Syro Malabar, like I'll be totally honest, like I was insecure about my Syro Malabar identity, even into priesthood. Like I know I'm not a priest. Even into seminary.
You clarify that.
yeah, even into seminary. Yeah. Like I knew that it was weird. Like how, when I think about like how the Lord was leading me, because like I also like heavily considered like joining like the Diocese of Orange or Archdiocese of Los Angeles. But it seemed like just like the only open path was to go through the Syro Malabar Diocese, and like I would bring it to like prayer and things like that, and it was always just like the Lord would be like, don't worry about it. Like we'll figure it out, you know, like it's okay. But I remember like the moment that I realized like that this is like who I am was when a group of college students, including Abhi, Suraj, myself, we went to Seek in Indianapolis, 2019. And there's one experience where like everybody, like we're talking like 16,000 college students, all Catholic, and they're only there because they want to express and live out and learn about their Catholic faith, right? And there was this moment where I think it was Jevin James, right? Like he, at some point, he just starts breaking out in the Syriac Trisagion. He starts singing like Arim Kon, right, and then we all start singing Kandisha, right? And all these other people start looking around. They're like, because they know we're Catholic, otherwise we wouldn't be there. But at the same time, they knew we were different, right? And it helped me understand that like being Syro Malabar Catholic is it's a unique part of the whole, right? Like I'm sometimes I think we can focus too much on the Syro part and not realize that we're part of like this bigger thing. And sometimes we can focus too much on the Catholic part and not realize that there's something very unique about us, right? But in that moment, it was like crystal clear that like I'm Catholic, but there's a unique way that God has given me to express that, right? And I kind of want to hear more about what you did in Houston, because at least like from the pictures and like, because like I wasn't in Houston, but like I saw that you were like really living out like that legacy of St. John Paul II, because like you weren't just doing like you weren't just bringing like Qurbana on campus, like you were connecting with the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston.
Kind of the theme of our podcast, right? You were going out into the city.
Yeah,
so
yeah. You
maybe talk about.
You want to talk about being a model Nazrani in the city? This
No,
is
no.
it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, you know, I've talked about being formed by the Roman Catholic Church. So I, you know, wanted to be a priest that wasn't confined to a bubble. And, you know, actually, as soon as I got to Houston for my assignment, I was just casually going through the website of the Archdiocese, and I saw that there is a minister for priests. So a priest literally whose job is to make sure that all priests have a spiritual life. So he's like kind of like a spiritual director, or he can act as a spiritual director for priests. So I reach out to him, and he just begins to kind of tell me about different things that are there in the Archdiocese. So just the relationships, you know. So like this priest, and then I began to start going to archdiocesan events, meeting priests, you know, meeting lay faithful, and just being able to stand there as a ceremonial priest. And I think I've gone in the white cassock at times, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm a Catholic priest. Don't worry," you know. You know, or even I've gone to help hear confessions, and I wear this, and then they're like, "Do you need me to get a stole?" And I'm like, no, I got my urara, you know, and just be like, yeah, don't worry, I'm a priest, good standing, everything. So just in small ways like that, relationships and trying to help out in the Archdiocese in different ways. But particularly through these relationships with other priests, you know, the more you talk about your priesthood in the church that you belong to, there's interest that comes is like, hey, can I come and concelebrate, or can you bring the liturgy to our church? So that happened, and we have a mission in the northern part of Houston, and so just kind of conversing with the priest there, and he says, okay, well, you're celebrating the Holy Qurbana for, you know, X amount of families who are Syro Malabar, but why don't you think about maybe introducing it to the greater community here? So it was a weekday, but there was a pretty good turnout because they usually have like a good amount of faithful that come for the evening mass that they have. And so it just happened that Thursday night, it's a Syro Malabar Qurbana instead. And, you know, I don't do anything. I just celebrate the Qurbana, you know. I bring in, you know, the Houston choir, and which are great young people who really know, really dedicated. And altar servers, you know, from the church, and just celebrate Qurbana and then do a Q&A. So I don't know if I really did anything consciously, but just, you know, just being a priest and talking to other priests and faithful, and the opportunity comes because people want to know, you know, like what is Syro Malabar? And sometimes they've even come to our church. Just right before I left, the priest who's now currently the rector of the seminary in Houston, the major seminary there, was the pastor of a nearby church to the Syro Malabar Church in Houston, St. Joseph. And so just became good friends with him. And he one day calls me and he's like, I've got 15 guys who are staying in this discernment house. Do you mind if they come and experience the Holy Qurbana? So he comes, and this is quarantine. So, you know, they come, wear masks, everything, socially distanced, and experience the Qurbana. And then afterwards, they just like, can we just talk about what we just experienced, and just, so yeah, I mean, I think you don't really have to do much, but just be open about sharing your Syro Malabar identity, and there will be plenty of experiences, particularly in connection with the Roman Catholic Church, where people will want to know more. So
that's right. I mean, I think you said that you didn't do anything consciously, but I do want to commend you on your willingness to connect. And your desire to be open, right? Because that whole story started with you just contacting that priest about getting connected to the Archdiocese.
That was the beginning,
Yeah. And it's something that I think about, where it's like we can't, because essentially what we're talking about is like the Syro Malabar churches, or just like the Eastern churches' role in the new evangelization, especially in in Western culture. Like it's not just a thing that the Roman Catholic Church does. Like, no, like we're gonna pull our own weight here too, right? Like we have to take part in that. And I feel like we can't just wait for someone to come into our church and be like, oh, this is interesting, and then we're all just like, oh yeah, come in. Like it's more like we have to go out, and we have to say like, look, we're Catholic too. We're almost like inviting ourselves in a way, right? Like I have this dream of like going to like the cathedral in the Diocese of Orange and just being like, or like trying to set up where we can celebrate the Qurbana there, because a lot of Roman Catholics don't even know there are Eastern churches, right? Or if they do, that it's just like the Byzantine Church, and we have to be like, no, like that's not it. There are other, like I even like, so I went 3 years at St. Joe's in Chicago, and then St. Joe's closed. Rest in peace. And I was transferred to St. John Vianney College Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Right.
Incredible place, but so many people were just surprised to hear about who I was, who Goodwin was, and Albin, like, because they didn't know that there was like this small Eastern church that can trace its heritage all the way back to St. Thomas the Apostle. And I think it's almost like a duty on our part to like educate in some sort of way to the rest of the church, right? Like it's not just like us evangelizing to like non-Christians, but it's also like us evangelizing to Catholics as well.
Yeah. Can I just hop in on,
please.
Yeah. Especially on the point you brought about like how we trace our lineage back to like St. Thomas, like our faith lineage. That alone has been like, in my experience, such a powerful thing, because like it's not always true, right? It's not always by nature of colonization, but I think a lot of people have an image of Catholicism, especially when it's like non-white people, as they were probably forced to convert for some reason.
Right.
And yeah, like there has been wrong done and all of these things, but at the same time, that's obviously not true. Not everyone was forced to convert, but that image is there nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I think people are always so shocked when I'm like, no, like my ancestors were Catholic. Like this is going back ages before there was any sort of colonization. And I think that like there's been so many people that are just like, whoa, that like when they see me, they expect me to be Hindu, or they expect, like I was saying, that it was because of colonization. But that explanation that like, no, like one of Jesus' original apostles, that's where I get my faith from. And that alone is sort of like maybe there's something more to this rather than just a bunch of white people trying to impose their views. And I think that, I don't know, as superficial as that sounds, for a lot of people in my experience, that's been like an eye-opening to Catholicism. There's something more than this. And that, pushing that aspect is so important. I feel like to show that the falsehood of that claim that this is a colonization religion. Right.
Like to bring back what Rajeev was saying, the church is not narrow-minded. The church expresses herself in so many different ways, right? That lead back to the same mysteries.
Yeah. So the expression of faith that Thomas gives us, you know, we say in Syriac, Marwalaha, right? My Lord, my God, and the Kartave and Devame, right? It's so much something that we hold on to, not because it's just 3 or 4 words, but it allows us to realize that, wow, the person who gave us the faith is someone who experienced Christ in such a profound way, and we are still to this day very much connected to his experience, and that manifests itself in different ways today. As we're still very much connected to that. So, I mean, we are sons and daughters of St. Thomas, the Apostle, but there's something that we have to keep doing as we hold on to that, and that is being able to give the faith to people who don't have it, but also even to strengthen those who are somewhat there in the faith,
Yeah, I mean, so this actually so we talk about we need to have the willingness to be open, right?
Yeah.
But that's that is kind of the first step, because I feel like a lot of our parishes don't act like that. There's almost a closed off sense.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what's your?
Because I think that comes from as I was talking to you before, this idea that we kind of subconsciously tell ourselves, because currently the state of the church is almost like that this is Kerala Catholicism. And on the note that Josh was talking about, I think that's what kind of that's part of that closed-mindedness comes from, that we should stay in that bubble so we don't lose it.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of comfort zone. So like I was asking, it was what is that balance, right? Of yes, this did come from Kerala, right? St. Thomas came to Kerala, so that is important. That's not a negligible point.
Yeah.
But also that we're here now, and we're in Australia, we're all over the world. So what does that mean? And what is that balance in from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, I'll start off by just saying I remember right before I left Kerala to come back to America and be ordained, so I was a deacon, I visited with Archbishop Valiyaveettil, who's now retired, and as we were leaving his office, he took both myself and Kevin Hutchin kind of close, and he's, not as healthy as he used to be, but still kind of gently took us, and he said, make sure that the Syro Malabar Church in America is not just Indians, but it should be more people that come to your church. And this was kind of like the final go message that I got from Kerala as I'm leaving, and coming back to the U.S. to be ordained. So I was, blown away when he told me that. And it still gives me goosebumps, because
that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. That, we need to open up and get out of the bubble a little bit. I don't know exactly how that looks like, but we need to first off maybe just think that this is not a place where we're preserving being Malayali or being from Kerala, but this is a place where we are handing down the faith. And if that is our focus, then it doesn't matter what your skin color is or what language you speak. You have a place in this church because you are a child of God, right? So, being more open to the community. I think just, we are, especially those who are working, are already in so many different places in terms of, whether it be in the IT field or healthcare or even students, right? We're everywhere. So just being able to share our faith, I think there will be plenty of people who will respond to an invitation to come for, a noon Holy Kurbana on Sunday, or even a weekday Kurbana, whatever it be. So I think it can start just like that, kind of going away from this is my Indian church where I grow in being Indian. No. I mean, maybe in some ways you grow in being Indian by coming to the Syro Malabar Church, but more so, no, I come to the church and I grow in faith. And this is a place where you can grow in faith too, is where we began to pop the bubble and respond to what Archbishop Valiyaveettil told me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
One way I've always kind of tried to see it is the culture is good, but it's the culture should promote the faith, not the faith promote the culture.
Right.
And Yeah, I guess that's where, and even in like the action plan per se, right? I think it's like you were saying, it's just in those little things, right?
Yeah.
Like the one move you made to reach out to that Achin that connected everything else.
Yeah.
Right. Or like you said, having those noon kurbanas and those little things and witnessing your story, right? Explaining like, why are you Catholic? And those little things that really do make a difference, but they're not these super profound things that I think we oftentimes jump to, you know, of like, we need to have some really big open convention where we invite everyone, or like, we need to do this. We need like a much nicer church. And like, all these things are important, right? But I think we've skipped steps. So, yeah.
I mean, I guess this is kind of the second plug, but this is the mission of Syro Creatives, finding ways to express our particular faith, right? Even if it came down to just having a sticker on your water bottle. Because people will notice that like we have like the Syro Malabar cross sticker, and a lot of people liked it, right? And people will see that and they'll be like, "That's a cross, but there's something different about that," right? And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be afraid to do that. Yeah.
Even that statement, like, right? That's a cross, but there's something different about it.
Yeah.
I feel like that summarizes so much. I was like,
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of times people, in my experience, who have never seen the St. Thomas cross, look at it and be like, wow, that's interesting. You know, why isn't Jesus on the cross? And well, you know, I mean, you actually find in the Catholic Church different types of crosses where we don't have the crucified body of Christ on it. But it's not saying, oh, we deny the crucifixion. No. But this particular cross, you know, we have one for those that are watching, right? This is showing the particular faith of St. Thomas, who experienced the resurrection. And, you know, that's there as the cross is empty. It's kind of pointing at the resurrection of the Lord. So, and people notice it. Like if you come to a Syro Malabar Kurbana, you know, it usually is there, right? It's on the altar, it's on the priest vestments.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people, that's first question is like, what is that? What's that cross all about?
Right.
It's everywhere, you know?
And it allows us to share like how we express the Catholic faith, right? I feel like another part of the answer in like how do we become more open, right? It's so simple, but it produces an incredible effect. Translations, honestly, like even in your story, like everything comes back to the fact that it was your first English Kurbana. That was the same for me at what was that event in Houston? Not convention. It was Summit.
Yeah.
That was the first time I've heard like the full blown English Kurbana. And I remember that
game changer.
Literally changed the game for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're I feel like we're in this process of kind of getting, I know this is something that's very dear to your heart. Like you were just saying the other day, we need to translate the Novena to St. Jude. You know, like we need to get all of these things out there, because if it's just in Malayalam, our audience is, or our congregation is limited in a sense, you know, like I can't share the Novena to St. Jude if I wanted to with someone else.
And the Novena to St. Jude is not particularly Syro Malabar, but what we have, I guess it is within our tradition because of our history. You know, we received devotion to certain saints, but then we took it to, you know, a really interesting level of developing these very elaborate prayers. Like here in San Francisco, we just had kind of a solemn feast for Mother Teresa, and we prayed a Ladin, right? And I always ask some of our adults, is like, what language is Ladin? Maybe we think it's Syriac, but it's actually Portuguese, right?
Okay.
So it's a devotional way to ask the intercession of the saints, which is part of the Syro Malabar tradition, but maybe like not inherently like Syriac, but it's something that we have. So to translate that to English would be beautiful. You know, it's something that we received from the Latin Church, but kind of became our own, you know, the Syro Malabar tradition now, I guess. But
Right.
to bring it back and, you know, have it in English would be great, and it's important.
Like that was a big deal watching Father Thomas Pulicola's ordination, because that was the first full English translation of the priestly ordination.
Yeah.
And that can set us up. That has set us up, you know, for being more open, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like even I always saw translation as just a means so that we kind of don't lose the kids within our community.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people see it that way, that it's like the kids that don't know English, what are they going to do? But like only recently have I even imagined that the Syro Malabar Church isn't just for us Malayalis.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so like that's such an important part of it, right? Like if they can't understand what's going on, how can they fully appreciate the beauty of it? So.
And see, when we're talking about translation, we maybe have this narrow-minded view. It's like it's either Malayalam or English. Well, that's not the case if you look at our Syro Malabar Church, because I can tell you from my experience, I've seen the Kurbana celebrated in all these different Indian languages: Hindi, Telugu, Marathi.
They put a video like that at a convention or something.
They did.
Right? That was beautiful.
Yeah. Even when I was in Kakinad, Major Archbishop celebrated the Kurbana in French because he knows French. He speaks fluently. I've experienced the Kurbana in part Italian because we knew that most of the congregation would only understand Italian. So to say like it's either Malayalam or English is even limited on our mindset.
For sure.
Okay. Well, I think this might be a good place to stop.
Yeah.
But just Acha, thank you so much for your witness.
No, thanks for having me.
Any last thoughts, Abhi?
Yeah, I learned a lot. Like I honestly thought these would be kind of like I'd expect the questions and the answers, but I'm glad this was sort of so many like wow moments.
Right.
I hope people listening learned something too, and I'm sure they did. So thank you so much for being on with us. Thank you for being our chaplain.
Yeah, and get hyped, people, because we got a lot of new stuff coming your way. But I guess like as like a final thought, like being a Nazrani, like you have something beautiful to give. And I always have to think that it's because God has given it to you first. When there's a process of receiving that we have to go through, but only so that we can share with other people, right?
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
So on that note, praise be Jesus Christ.
Always and forever.
Amen.